Welcome to Playback, TRT World's weekly showcase of our best stories from around the globe. On this episode, we have our special coverage of the Russian assault in Ukraine coming up. A week into Europe's worst conflict since the Second World War, Ukraine is withstanding Russian attacks on its cities and towns. More than 1 million refugees have now fled the country, almost half of them to neighboring Poland. And with gas flows from Russia dwindling, supply shortages and rising prices have European consumers feeling the pinch. Russian forces, which had been massing on the border for months, crossed into Ukraine from the north and east, beginning an all-out assault. The incursion has created a refugee crisis and sent economic shockwaves around the world, and international condemnation came swiftly and definitively.
We will continue to, working with you and with other friends and allies, we will continue to support our Ukrainian friends, and we will continue to do that for as long as it takes. And one way or another, I'm absolutely convinced, I'm more convinced than ever, as this hideous conflict progresses, that Putin will fail.
NATO is a defensive alliance. We do not seek conflict with Russia. Our message to President Putin is: stop the war, pull out all your forces from Ukraine, and engage in good faith in diplomatic efforts. The world stands with Ukraine in calling for peace.
We reject Russia's decision to recognize the so-called Donetsk and Luhansk republics, as we have rejected the illegal annexation of Crimea and call for its revocation. In the face of the ongoing act of aggression against Ukraine, we remain unequivocal in our support for Ukraine's independence, territorial integrity, unity, sovereignty within its internationally recognized borders.
On Tuesday, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov addressed the Human Rights Council, but while he was speaking, dozens of diplomats stood up and walked away. The walkout was led by Ukraine's ambassador to the UN. About 100 diplomats left the hall in Geneva as Lavrov accused Kiev of leading an oppressive regime and undermining religious freedoms.
The Ukrainian regime are after suppression of opposition. They close the TV channels that they don't like. They carry out repression to include members of parliament. These are the acts of abuse and human rights. The traditions of the victorious Second World War are now ruined. The monuments of the commanders who won the war are ruined, while the criminals are now supported and glorified.
Well, earlier in the week, President Volodymyr Zelensky signed an official application for Ukraine's immediate membership of the European Union. Now, Ukraine is not recognized as an official candidate for EU membership, despite being involved in economic deals since 2017. Zelensky's call to join the bloc followed the first round of talks with Russia to stop the incursion. The application process is a largely symbolic move, as negotiations usually take years, and is likely to draw strong protest from Russia. The UN General Assembly held a special session on Wednesday, the 11th time such a meeting has been held since 1950. The Assembly voted strongly in favor of a resolution to censure Russia for its military actions. It also called for the immediate withdrawal of Russian forces. The measure isn't legally binding, but it increases pressure on Russia and its ally, Belarus. And on Thursday, TRT World's Ali Mustafa attended a press conference with President Zelensky in Kiev and asked him about Turkey's stance on the conflict.
President Zelensky, Ali Mustafa from TRT, Turkey. Yeah. You are very close to Turkey. Turkey is one of your close partners of Ukraine that provides you with drones. But the Turkish foreign minister came out and said that he will not be supporting sanctions against Russia. What is your position on that?
We have a very strong and good relationship with the Turkish President Erdogan. He is helping. Erdogan has helped Ukraine a lot. I'm very thankful to him. At the political level, he's also making a lot of steps in order to let the President of Russia understand that he needs to stop the war. Not many leaders in the world has this opportunity. There are a lot of those who desire to, but don't have the opportunity. Erdogan is very strong. He's a very serious president and he helps a lot.
What more can Turkey do for you?
I think Turkish President Erdogan is one that will make security guarantees for Ukraine. When we sit at the negotiations table with the President of Russia, Erdogan will help obtain these security guarantees for Ukraine. For this reason, he will affect this process. I strongly believe in this.
While President Zelensky made a remarkable plea as Russian forces moved into Ukrainian territory. He called for any foreigners with combat experience to help. Entry requirements into the country have been lifted for any volunteer willing to join Ukraine's new Foreign Legion. As Liz Maddock reports, it's inspired people from all walks of life.
Hello, yeah, we've come to join the Ukrainian army, or whatever they're called.
They might not know all the details, but these men are willing to leave the safety of London to fight against Russia.
They look like they need help. We're young, strong, fit men, we can help, so why not?
They've seen the desperate situation in Ukraine. They've heard the extraordinary plea from the Ukrainian president.
If you have combat experience in Europe and don't want to watch the indecision of politicians, you can come to our country and join us in defending Europe.
It's enough to convince them to join Ukraine's new international legion.
Yeah, I can get on a flight tomorrow.
And if you don't mind asking, how old are you?
I'm 60, which means I'm just about within the age range they'll accept.
The UK government won't send troops, and there are laws against fighting for foreign armies, but it supports its civilians going.
But they are fighting, the people of Ukraine are fighting for freedom and democracy, not just for Ukraine, but for the whole of Europe, because that is what President Putin is challenging. And absolutely, if people want to support that struggle, I would support them in doing that.
The Ukrainian government says thousands of people from around the world have volunteered to fight alongside their troops. The most willing are from Georgia, who remember exactly what a Russian invasion looks like.
It's my duty to be in Ukraine in these difficult days and defend their independence. Ukrainians stood with Georgia when Russia invaded in 2008 and saved many Georgians. They died for our independence and we are indebted.
These are cooks, tradespeople, teachers, leaving their lives behind to head to the front lines, knowing they may never return. Liz Maddock, TRT World.
A team from the International Criminal Court has left The Hague to investigate possible war crimes that may have been taken place in Ukraine. A record 39 countries have referred Russia, meaning that the investigation can begin immediately. Investigators will be looking for examples of atrocities like indiscriminate shelling of residential areas, the deliberate targeting of civilians, and the use of imprecise weaponry like cluster munitions and vacuum bombs. To Moscow now. Since the start of Russia's attack on Ukraine, Russian police have detained about 7,000 anti-war protesters across the country. Jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has called on his supporters not to be intimidated by the arrests. He urged them to keep standing up against President Vladimir Putin and the full-scale attacks on Ukraine. Mehmet Solmaz has more.
Prominent Putin opponent Alexei Navalny might be behind bars, but he continues to send strong political messages from his prison cell, saying Russians should not become a nation of frightened, silent people, and called on his supporters to stage daily anti-war rallies.
Putin is not Russia, and if there is anything in Russia right now that you can be most proud of, it is those 6,824 people who were detained because, without any call, they took to the streets with placards saying no war. Everything has a price, and now in the spring of 2022 we must pay this price. There's no one to do it for us. Let's not be against the war, let's fight against the war.
But protesting the Ukraine attacks comes at a price, not only for individuals, but also for businesses. A TV and a radio station have been taken off air for allegedly spreading false information about the Ukraine incursion. A list of prominent Russian opposition figures penned a joint letter to the international policing agency Interpol, saying freedoms have further deteriorated and that the government may want to punish critics through Interpol warrants.
We are concerned that the Russian Federation will continue to fabricate cases in order to prosecute its political opponents and vocal critics of the Putin regime. We believe that the Russian Federation will use and abuse the Interpol system in order to lodge red notices and diffusion orders based on falsified claims and arrest warrants issued for politically motivated fabricated cases.
Although the anti-war camp is not in the majority, the crippling Russian economy is hitting people hard. With the ruble plummeting, the central bank is calling for calm, asking people not to panic. But every day is witness to long lines at ATMs, underlining the economic uncertainty facing ordinary Russians. And ultimately, it is to the Russian people Putin will have to answer. Mehmet Solmaz, TRT World.
The West's most powerful weapon in its efforts to deter Russian aggression is sanctions. In the days following the military action, allies cut off Russian banks from international financial markets. The ruble plummeted almost 40% overnight, and the Russian central bank doubled interest rates to try to contain the losses. However, Russia's biggest earner, the energy sector, has been mostly spared so far. Energy analysts say Moscow sold about $100 billion worth of oil and gas to Europe last year, meaning sanctions on the industry would leave a void that would be impossible for the West to fill. Nonetheless, sanctions have still caused a spike in international oil prices, and European gas costs are hitting record highs. That surge in energy costs and fears over energy security have prompted nations like Germany to diversify their sourcing. Sibel Karkush has more from Berlin.
Europe is prepared to suffer the consequences.
These sanctions will come at a cost for our economy too. But this is a defining moment, and this is the cost we are willing to pay.
Western leaders have long warned their own nations will suffer following sanctions on Moscow over its military attack on Ukraine. Now industries and citizens are beginning to feel it. Relying much on Russia for its oil and gas, worries about energy supplies have rattled European markets. On Wednesday, the international crude benchmark Brent hit $113 a barrel for the first time since July 2014. At the same time, European gas prices surged to a new record high of more than $200 per megawatt hour. A huge concern for Germany, which as the continent's largest economy is also the biggest consumer of Russian energy. Something it's now desperate to change as its gas reserves are critically low. Germany receives half of its natural gas imports from Russia and has been under increasing pressure to be less dependent. That's why the government is now purchasing liquefied natural gas worth $1.7 billion from other countries, so that Germans won't have to freeze next winter. But they will certainly have to pay more to stay warm, as rising commodity prices have created a domino effect on costs for consumers. Last month alone, inflation in the Eurozone hit a record high of 5.8%, and analysts warn it could rise further.
Energy prices matter hugely, but also food prices more generally, because, of course, export of wheat, which comes from Russia and the Ukraine, that we've already seen wheat prices go up significantly. Plus, of course, exports of iron ore, steel, minerals that also come from Russia. And they will also be disrupted, one assumes, and prices are going up there too.
So far, the US and its European allies have spared the oil and gas sector from sanctions, except for halting the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, which wasn't operational. And Russia has continued to meet its supply obligations. But export restrictions and economic sanctions on Moscow are getting harsher, with the EU disconnecting key Russian banks from the SWIFT financial system on Wednesday. And with each day Russia's war in Ukraine continues, and the longer the list of sanctions gets, analysts fear high inflation could be here to stay. But for many Europeans, like these protesters here in Berlin, it's a small price to pay for Ukraine's freedom. And they say they'd rather take a cold shower than finance an unjustified war. Sibel Karkush, TRT World, Berlin.
Well, as the sanctions take aim at Putin's close circle and Russian wealthy elite, Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich has put London's Chelsea Football Club on the market and has promised to give net proceeds of the sale to Ukraine war victims. Abramovich has controlled the current world club and European champion team for over 20 years. He has also vowed to write off a $2 billion loan owed to him by the club. Well, in a matter of days, life in Ukraine has been turned upside down. In just a week, the UN says more than 1 million people were displaced inside Ukraine and another 1 million fled the country. The agency estimates that up to 12 million people may need relief and protection within the country, and more than 4 million will need help in neighboring countries in the coming months. The UNHCR says it's working to support neighboring countries, providing humanitarian aid and processing assistance in border areas. While the road to safety is always a difficult one for refugees, and reports from foreign students in Ukraine reveal not everyone is being treated the same. Sarah Balter reports.
Foreign students trying to escape from Ukraine report there's little in the way of help.
We went to the train station and they will not let us in. And when they did let us in, they were like, "You have to give us money because this is not for free for you because you are foreign. This is not free for you. You have to pay for it."
Moroccan student Selma Al-Alawi is one of hundreds of thousands fleeing Russian attacks on major cities, including Kiev, Kharkiv, Kherson, and Odessa, according to the UN. Several students reported difficulty getting on buses and trains wide open to Ukrainians, and that non-citizens are being forced to walk 40 to 45 kilometers in the cold. Some of those who made it report segregation between foreigners and citizens, and some say what they faced or witnessed went beyond citizenship.
At the border guys, border soldiers, border police, there was like super racist, I think. And all the black people, Arabic people especially, what I saw, they beat them, they towed their gun to them at night. It was snowing, like just people wanted to walk.
Mostly they would consider white people first, Indian people, Arabic people, before black people. As long as you're black, no one likes you.
They're not letting us go. Is it right? Social media posts showing what appears to be discrimination at train stations and on the borders have prompted a backlash and condemnation on Monday from African UN ambassadors.
South Africa endorses the statement issued by the African Union Commission expressing concern that the treatment given to African nationals and people of African descent at the borders of Ukraine, some of whom are not allowed to cross and move to safety.
Joyini urged EU countries to ensure all have the right to cross the borders to escape the conflict in Ukraine. Sarah Balter, TRT World.
Well, almost half of those who have fled have gone to Poland, with Polish authorities saying more than 450,000 people have entered the country since the start of the attack. Around 70,000 refugees have arrived in Hungary. Julida Aigar reports.
An outpouring of solidarity. Hungarians waiting at the border to help tens of thousands fleeing from Ukraine whose lives have been shattered by Russia's actions.
I don't even know most people here. We just said good morning. Everyone does their job, but I don't know who is from where. The only thing that matters is that everyone wants to help. Everyone is selfless, enthusiastic. We hope that this war and this suffering will end as soon as possible.
More than 70,000 people have streamed into Hungary since Moscow first attacked Ukraine last week. Most of them women and children carrying their belongings in plastic bags and suitcases. Within hours, thousands of Hungarians had bought food and aid supplies, with many opening up their homes.
I was angry at myself that it took so long for me to think that I should also be doing something. There was my car in my garage doing nothing, but it takes time for one to realise that we are in a situation to which we are not used to. And you see all those masses of people coming over, and you try to imagine what it would be like if you had to flee for your life too, and what would you do, and what help would you need?
In 2015, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán described migrants arriving in Europe from countries such as Syria and Afghanistan as poison, building a razor-wire fence to keep them out. But he has pledged to remain open for those fleeing neighbouring Ukraine.
I don't care about politics and organisations, and not even the church. Only humans matter. That they are facing misery, and someone has to be with them who gives them a good word, a hug, food, travel advice and hope. Because the biggest thing they have lost was hope.
The Hungarian government has granted anyone arriving from Ukraine temporary protection, but with a population of more than 43 million people, the number of those displaced and seeking safety elsewhere is only likely to grow. Julie Ager, TRT World.
Well, as the humanitarian situation in Ukraine worsens day by day, the European Union is set to announce new asylum rules in a bid to deal with the mass arrivals of refugees in the bloc. It would apply to Ukrainians and anyone who will have had long-term residency or refugee status in the country. The new legislation would grant them a residence permit, rights to employment and social welfare in all member states for up to 3 years.
We're seeing the continuous devastating impacts of this illegal war on Ukraine and its citizens. And today I will, along with other colleagues, be pushing to ensure that a decision is taken to activate the temporary mechanism, which will, of course, provide much needed support to the Ukrainian citizens and to Ukraine's people.
But while the EU and the countries surrounding Ukraine have opened their doors to Ukrainians fleeing Russian attack, the UK is lagging behind in willingness to welcome refugees. Despite mounting pressure on the UK government to relax the rules, currently only direct family members of Ukrainians already settled in the UK are being allowed in. Claudia Wyatt reports.
The British government has come under fire for not doing enough to allow Ukrainians fleeing their country to come to the UK. While most EU countries have opened their doors, the UK is only allowing immediate family members of British nationals. Thousands of people, mainly women and children, continue fleeing Ukraine. And while the EU has announced any Ukrainian can seek refuge in Europe for up to 3 years, the UK has not followed suit. Instead, only Ukrainians who are already settled in the UK will be able to bring over their spouses and children, but not adult children, grandparents or siblings. Thousands of people took to the streets in London over the weekend to protest the Russian attack on Ukraine and to urge the UK government to do more. Prime Minister Boris Johnson met members of the Ukrainian community in London on Sunday, promising not to turn our backs on Ukraine's hour of need. But his government has come under increasing criticism over the UK's refusal to issue an open-door policy. Tanya's sister is stuck in Romania with her 2 young children, as siblings do not qualify as close relatives under the existing rules.
The question is what is there for her in the future? So she can't obviously go back. She would like to, but she can't. And it's just a matter of resources. She can't stay there forever in the hotel. She can't go back. And she can't join me, although we have the space for her. I'm not expecting the government to give them the residency, the British citizenship, nothing like that. She doesn't want that. She wants safety and stay with her family, so I actually can help her with the children as well.
The UK opposition has accused the government of acting too slowly, saying it's shameful the UK is not allowing more Ukrainians in.
We want to be as generous as we possibly can, and certainly we want people who have relatives in Ukraine to be able to bring them over as fast as possible. We want to make sure that we have routes for people fleeing disaster, war, persecution in Ukraine to come here.
Pressure is mounting on the Prime Minister to match his words with deeds and waive visa rules, which would allow any Ukrainian to find sanctuary in the UK. Claudia Wyatt, TRT World.
Well, that rounds up your week of news here on Playback. We'll leave you with these pictures of Ukrainian refugees fleeing their country. Stay tuned to TRT World for the latest stories.